resilience is a word that comes up a lot in your book. How do you define that?
I try and define it in really simple and plain terms. Like I think for me and the way that we discuss it in the context of psychology, it's basically just one's ability to recover from adverse events, to successfully and efficiently and effectively get back to an even keel after things go wrong in life, as does happen for all of us. And it's a funny one because I guess you could define it in so many different kind of ways, and I think it means different things to different people. But in my context and the work that I do, I think you've got to have a pretty clearly defined explanation for what it is and what you're trying to achieve when you're working with people around resilience. And so for me, it's basically just making people good at getting through tough times.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really concise.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of it in a few different ways. Like one is the getting through tough times, adversity, but then also like compartmentalizing difficulty within day-to-day life.
Yeah.
I'd say that's resilience too, right?
Well, that's the thing. And when we talk about adversity as well, like I think when we have this conversation around adversity and resilience, so often we sort of, I guess, frame it up, adversity up as being the big things which go wrong in life, and we frame up resilience as being our ability to get through the really bad stuff, right? The life-changing, life-defining events, the divorce or the redundancy or the loss of a loved one or the cancer or whatever it may be, right? And for me, when it comes to resilience, I'm far more interested in that day-to-day stuff. For me, that's kind of how I ended up in this field and working within this space is that, and I'm sure we'll get onto this, but post-cancer, I came to see what a profound impact, I guess, being a little bit more resilient had on my life. Don't think I was a particularly resilient person before the cancer, nor do I think I'm a particularly resilient person after the cancer either, right? But I was shown undoubtedly that having learnt some skills or tools or strategies for getting through tough times by going through the cancer made my life better afterwards because I was applying those same things to not just big stuff, not just, life-changing stuff or cancer or health challenges or whatever it may be, but all of the other stuff which previously had weighed me down or which had been a burden or which I had spent time and effort and energy worrying about prior. After the cancer, after going through that and learning those skills, life was just better. So for me, resilience is not so much about that big stuff. It's more about how we can, I guess, shape and craft people's experience of day-to-day life by making them good at bouncing back from the small stuff as well, the things which we all face, the arguments with loved ones or losing the car keys or the car breaking down or breaking your phone screen or whatever it is, just trying to make people good at getting through life.
Yeah. Do you think it's a bit like a capacity thing, meaning that you can add capacity?
Yes, definitely.
And that at times you'll have way less capacity and ability to handle it?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go with that is in terms of capacity, it's something which is, at higher and lower points at different times, obviously, and I think we've all experienced and felt that, right? There are times when things are going wrong, when your emotional battery's a bit flat and one more thing happens and it's kind of like, oh no, I've absolutely had it up to here, right?
Yeah, and the smallest of things.
Exactly, and it is always the smallest of things which previously, when we have a greater capacity to manage and recover from these things that wouldn't even warrant a second thought. But in the same way that it's that is a capacity, it is something which can be trained and developed and crafted and honed and improved over the course of time, right? We know that there are studied and proven skills and tools and strategies, attitudes, behaviours, habits which people can form, which basically make us better at getting through bad things happening. And by practicing these, by learning these, by putting them into action in life, you can increase that capacity that you have. Sure, sometimes it'll be higher, sometimes it'll be lower, but it's like a muscle which you can train. You can teach yourself to become more resilient, and in doing so, you can make the rest of your life better, I guess, easier, more enjoyable, regardless of what it is that happens to you in the future.
Just take a quick moment to say thank you to NeuroFit for supporting the podcast. Having personally gone through one of their programs, I can speak to the value and what I learned about myself. I'm a massive advocate for professional development, and I recommend taking a look at NeuroFit today. Yeah, I think there's a few things that you can do, but like for me, one of the things I've been working on lately is intentionally doing these things that are hard or difficult or uncomfortable in order to try and build that muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is that for you?
Well, like for example, these cold water swims, or
it's a common
just getting
one,
in
right?
the, it's quite practical. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. whether it's, making that cold call or doing that thing that you don't want to do, and just trying to close those loops that are potentially sometimes open. That's a big thing for me, is completion.
Yeah, sure.
I'm really good at starting things, but finishing them is not
Yeah,
always
right.
the easiest. And
Yeah,
so
sure.
consciously working on that.
Yeah, I think it is, as you say, just about finding a way to push yourself. And for a lot of people, as you say, that is the cold plunge side of things or the ice bath side of things. For a lot of people, it's exercise as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's cardio, whether it's strength. I guess the way that we build a sense of resilience is through this idea of self-efficacy, right? Which you probably will have heard of before. Self-efficacy being basically just your ability to back yourself to do something, achieve something, get through something. And you build this sense of self-efficacy by, lo and behold, having got through things, right? You have to go through and experience and overcome or recover from or bounce back from these things which happen. And so for you, your sense of self-efficacy around your ability to, round out and complete tasks is improved and grown when you push yourself to do that and you do that. And then you I guess back yourself more to be able to do that again in the future. And the same applies with resilience, right? If we, push ourselves and test ourselves in our ability to overcome things which are uncomfortable or painful or hard or challenging or difficult, then we grow our own faith in our ability to be able to do so in the future. And the sense of self-efficacy grows and we become more resilient as a result of that. And I think that that's really empowering, right? This is probably, for me, the thing which I think is most exciting about resilience and how we know that we can learn and grow and develop these skills around resilience is that it's incredibly empowering that is the case. So much of adversity in life is about, really all adversity in life is about a lack of control. Things go wrong. The issue with them is that they're not in our control. We can't fix them. We can't, undo the divorce or the redundancy or the loss of a loved one or the cancer diagnosis. And that is disempowering and it is difficult and uncomfortable because of that. However, our ability to learn and craft and hone our skills around resilience are within our control. And that's exciting. That gives us sort of something which we can hold on to, something which we can use to exert some form of control or influence over the circumstances which we find ourselves in. And it makes life feel a little bit less, I don't know, untethered or outside of our control. It gives us sort of one string which we can play. And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I like that concept earlier on in the book, right, regarding the bigger goal or the bigger thing or the bigger task at hand, but then just like, the one foot in front of it, the other sort of mindset, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot more easier to get your head around, a lot less variables and simple, but not easy, or easy but not simple. One or the other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of a mix of both, maybe.
And so how do you sort of this is the question I had for you around, like, you've got such a distinct, defined historical life path up until this moment, right? How do you balance that with the future? And how do you mix those two things, right? Like your identity is so largely shaped by your life to date.
Yeah, sure.
If that makes any sense.
It's a great question. And it's something which I've been thinking a lot more about recently as well. There's kind of two sides to it. I guess I assume, and I guess this is kind of quite telling in itself probably, but when you say that, I assume that you're talking about the cancer specifically and sort of how that defines me in different ways now. Whether that's what you meant or not, like I say, it's pretty telling that that's straight away where my head goes to around it. And so in that context, there's two different sides to the same coin. I guess the first side, when it comes to me personally and how I sort of define or consider the impact that cancer's had on me today, I feel incredibly grateful for that, right? And whenever I say that, which is often, I am always very careful to sort of, I guess, preface it or to put some conditions around it by acknowledging the fact that I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to say that, right? There's a lot of people out there who are not grateful for the impact that cancer's had on their life. There's a lot of people out there who can't be grateful for the impact that cancer's had on their life. And for me, I'm very mindful of not talking about that sort of flippantly or with disregard for that fact. But for me, in my situation, my circumstances, I think for me, cancer has made me a better person, broadly speaking. It's made me a happier person. It's made me enjoy my life a lot more. I think it's taught me a lot of things which I'm very grateful for having learned. And so again, whilst I have to acknowledge I'm in a pretty fortunate position to even be able to say it, I wouldn't change anything about having had the cancer or about that cancer experience. I'm grateful for having gone through it. Is it entirely positive? No, I probably would have said yes up until quite recently. Now with kind of 10 years of hindsight and kind of the benefit of increasing distance, I come to wonder whether some of the ways that it has, I guess, shaped how I think or what I feel at times is not entirely healthy. I think it's sort of warped my time horizons in a way which I have to now consciously try and undo. I think it's really pushed me to focus only ever on the short term and not look too far ahead into the future, which is a really just a coping strategy when you're going through the cancer and even through the 5 years of remission when you don't know if the cancer is going to come back or not. Again, it's pretty hard to try and look 5 years ahead, let alone further than 5 years ahead. Yeah. And so that's something which I'm consciously trying to do better at now. But overall, I feel very, very grateful inside myself for the impact that the cancer's had. It doesn't negatively impact me profoundly. It's not painful, it's not uncomfortable, it's not sad, it's not awkward, it's not difficult to think about or look back on. It was a very, very, overall, a very, very positive time of life and experience of life. I've got a little tattoo, which is related to the cancer. It's very, very small and it's very, very hidden. And someone spotted it recently, and what they said to me was, why would you want something on you which is a reminder of that experience? Is that not sort of, painful or challenging or difficult? Does it not make you sad every time you sort of see it or think about it? And I thought, wow, that sort of maybe gave me an insight into how other people might perceive how I might feel about the experience. And it's not that at all. It's not like that at all. I don't think or feel that way about it. So that's kind of how the cancer defines me within myself. The other side of that coin is how the cancer defines me for other people, which is far more difficult for me, I think, right? And the reality is that the work which I do now in terms of resilience and around psychology has come about through my experience with cancer. There's no doubt. I mean, that's, as I say, sort of what set me on this path and what gave me this fixation or fascination with resilience was having seen the profoundly powerful impact which it had on me in my life after the cancer. And so there's no doubt that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now were it not for having gone through the cancer. But it's also meant that the work which I do still to this day is kind of inherently tied to that cancer experience. And whilst, as I say, I've got no qualms talking about the cancer, I mean, I find myself doing it for generally many hours a week, which again, is not hard or difficult. But I suppose part of me does not resent that necessarily, but as time goes on, I become increasingly driven to not feel defined by something which, and this is, again, not defined internally, but defined externally by something which I went through or something which I did in terms of the speech 10 years ago now, nearly 10 years ago, coming up on 10 years. And I think for me, in many ways, the release of this book was kind of epitomised that. It almost felt like I'd gone away, studied in psychology, spent the past sort of 5 or 6 years working with companies and organisations all around the world to teach, but also to learn around what makes people good at getting through tough times. I'd been to Antarctica, run ultra marathons, interviewed all of these incredible ex-prime ministers and gold medalists and people from all these incredible walks of life to sort of understand what it is that makes us good at recovering from tough times in life. You release the book, which is sort of a testament to all that work or an ode to that work, and the headlines are all teen cancer survivor Jake Bailey releases book on resilience. And it was like, well, hang on, that's that was like I said, I'm 27. To see the word teen in the same sentence as my name now is quite jarring still, because I'm a hell of a lot closer to 30 than I am to a teenager. And so, yeah, I think for me, as I say, increasingly I've become challenged by being defined by other people as a result of that experience. And I think that that's, if anything, just made me feel more driven to really get to know people so that people can kind of get to know me as opposed to getting to know, I don't know, some guy that they saw give a speech at his high school back in 2015 or, teen cancer survivor, as some of my friends and I joke about. Sort of TCS is the acronym that we sort of throw around as, I don't quite call it a nickname, but maybe something used to rack me up occasionally. So, Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the way that the cancer and that experience shapes my life still to this day, both in positive and in negative ways.
Yeah. Wonder what you would be doing if it wasn't for the cancer.
I wonder that a lot as well. And I think, it's impossible to know. I can probably track 5 years reasonably clearly. I would have gone to the University of Auckland. I would have done commerce and law, and I would have finished up there in sort of 2020, 2021. From there, I don't know. I suspect I probably would have gone down the law pathway instead. That's just a hunch. I'm not sure really kind of how the circumstances would have potentially shaped that or changed that at the time. It's an unknowable, of course, right? But that's kind of the pathway I would have taken, and then you can sort of roughly guess approximately where I would have been off the back of that, I think.
Yeah. I'm so big on the future, probably to my detriment.
Sure.
I try to be present, obviously, but I'm really big on the future versus the past. And so I wonder what the next 7 years, 10 years looks like.
So do I, believe me. We sound like we're sort of yin and yang, to be honest. We sound like if you combined the two of us together, we'd make a perfectly normal, healthy person. It's a bit of a shame that we're not. I think, that is something which I've begun to consider a lot more recently. 7 years from now, 10 years from now, I'll be in a very different place to where I am right now. I've got no doubt about that. I'm not entirely sure where it will be, but it won't be doing what I'm currently doing now. At least certainly not in the format which it's currently in. I think for me, the release of the book marks the start of the end within this space, and it's not because of anything other than I kind of feel like I've achieved what I wanted to in this space.
Yeah,
I've had an incredible 10 years. I've been so fortunate, so indescribably lucky to have had the opportunities which I've had. But I feel like I've kind of done what I wanted to do here now, and I'm excited to take another opportunity on. I still see myself continuing to do this in some form or some iteration into the future, and for a very long time to come still yet. It's a passion of mine. I genuinely enjoy it, and I feel very, very lucky to have the opportunity to do it. But I'm ready for a new challenge of some form or variety as well. What that will be, I'm not entirely sure yet. It's very, very early days. I've only started sort of pondering around what kind of shape that might take in the last couple of months. But I'm ready for a new challenge,
a new chapter, a new phase.
Yeah. I was talking to someone recently, and they were talking about this idea of hitting a false summit on a mountain. Right, you climb a mountain, you think you see the peak, and you sort of you climb there, and you realize that it's not the top, right? And I feel like for me, and I don't want it to come across the wrong way, but I feel like for me, I have, with the release of this book, kind of hit the summit in this space. I'm sure there's more which I could do. I'm sure there are things which people, far more talented and ambitious and driven than me would want to do within this space. But for me and where I'm at, this was the summit. Getting the opportunity to release this book, being where I'm at with work now, work's in a really good place, and I'm really, really fortunate to have the opportunity to work with and to present to more people than I've ever been able to in the past, of wider backgrounds and countries and cultures and walks of life than ever before. And I felt like I sort of stepped foot on the summit in this space, and thought, well, where do I go now? I don't really want to keep sitting here. I don't really want to extend particularly further in the space than I already have. And so it's kind of almost time to aim for that next summit. I'm not quite sure where it is or what it is yet, but I'm ready to keep on climbing towards a new goal and to try and reach the peak of something else now.
Yeah. I wonder where this will lead. I'm curious.
Yeah. If you find out, could you let me know? Because I'm really, really, really keen to find out myself.
Yeah. You're serious?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm really, really keen to find out sort of what the next steps will be and kind of where things will lead. And as I say, I think the last 10 years I've had a pretty kind of laissez-faire approach to future planning.
Yeah.
And I'm doing better with that now, but I must say that it's held me in relatively good stead for the past 10 years as well. So I'm not stressed. I'm excited to sort of see where things lead.
Do you think a business of some sort or a career in something niche, or
It could be any of these things.
it could be
It
anything?
really could be anything. There's been a few things which have kind of piqued my interest, but it's
Yeah.
just such early stages and early days that I'm not even entirely sure
No.
kind of what area and field. I know what is important to me. People are really important to me. I love talking to, working with, meeting people. So something around people would be really important to me. I've been really fortunate to have had a lot of freedom and flexibility over the past 10 years, and I'd like to retain as much of that as possible, as I think we all do in life, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, it's got a bit of a shape or an outline to it, but I'm not entirely clear what it will exactly be yet. Yeah.
I'm sure over the last 10 years you've met a number of people,
Yes.
hundreds, thousands
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that's a hugely valuable part of it, right?
There's definitely a lot of
Connections
Yeah,
and-
a lot of connections and a lot of opportunities to tap into. I've been, really lucky to have heard that line. We'd hire you in an instant. We'd make a job for you in a heartbeat a few times now. So
Right.
now it's a process of trying to figure out A, whether that is bullshit or not, and two, whether I actually want to kind of go and work and within some of these respective fields.
Well,
So
that's it.
time will tell.
Yeah. I got harassed, or not harassed, but I got asked on repeat the same question for about 3-4 months maybe. And it was the question of like, what does success look like?
Yeah, sure.
And it's like such a open-ended question. It can mean so many different things. But I finally woke up one day and I was like, oh, I've got it. It's hanging around good people all day, right? Like spending the day with like good people, good conversations, and that's it. Like it's clearly not money, right? Like,
I think, I really do. I really do think it's people. The only thing I can find that makes life worth living for me is people and connection. So that's certainly what I'm driven by, and it's been a really big driver for the past 10 years of this work for me as well. That's been the thing which I've enjoyed most about the work and felt most privileged to be able to do, is to meet with, talk to, present to, learn from over 100,000 people now around the world.
Wow.
And yeah, it's by far been sort of like the greatest privilege of my life. Yeah.
amazing. What's been the biggest audience that you've spoken to?
Spoken to 3,500, and that's been twice at two different contexts, two different events.
Wow.
So yeah, it's never something which I'm particularly mindful of. It doesn't make me more or less nervous, regardless of whether they're a smaller or larger audience. I think probably what I enjoy most is actually working with smaller, more intimate groups. I had the privilege of presenting to a group yesterday of some learners at a Polytech organisation, and it was a really small group. It would have been 10 of us maybe, and we sort of pulled the chairs around in a circle and just sat and talked.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's often more exciting and enjoyable and rewarding than going to a big gala dinner and presenting to 2,000-3,000 people in a room.
Is that because there's feedback and it's two directional, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Partly.
I think for me, I guess I get to see more of the connection or impact which you have, and you have the capacity to talk and to sort of sharing that experience with other people as well. When I present to groups, I often say if they're a group of a size which makes it reasonable, I'd say, I'd much rather kind of talk with you rather than talk at you. I'll race through the basics, and we'll outline the sort of the ground stuff, and then after that, why don't we have a conversation around it, a back and forth conversation,
Nice.
instead of you just sitting there and listening to me sort of harp on. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then it can move and flow with the energy, right? Rather than
100%.
just being a lecture.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about those bigger audiences? Is it generally how long are they generally, the talks? Is it like an hour, or?
I typically try and fit into 1 hour slots.
Yeah.
And that's just simply because, one, I do a lot of work with schools, and schools generally have sort of 55-minute or 1 hour periods, and so you sort of got to slot into their timetable as much as anything.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a comfortable amount of time for people to sit and listen for, I think. It works. But, you've got to be variable and adaptable if it comes to being a dinner speaker or something. You've got to really condense these things down. You're going to be left with 20 to 30 minutes. So you've got to be, in the speaking world, adaptable, right?
Yeah, totally. And did you say you've been to Antarctica?
Yes. So I
Cool.
had the privilege of going to Antarctica earlier this year, actually, and went through an incredible organisation called the Antarctic Heritage Trust, who sort of manage and conserve the history down there, the historic huts of those heroic age explorers. Names familiar such as Ernest Shackleton and Robert Falcon Scott and some of those pioneering explorers down there, and managed not only the huts but all of the artifacts and the history within them.
Wow.
Tens of thousands of artifacts, monuments or testaments to life down on the ice. Everything from, books and newspapers and family photos and clothing and photographic equipment and scientific equipment and
Wow.
kind of everything. Food, which was left behind. So had the privilege of going down there. For me, a big part of that was to engage with and learn about the work of AHT, but also from a personal perspective to better understand and learn about the resilience of some of those incredible first Arctic explorers, right? We talk about resilience in the context that I was framing it up before, your ability to bounce back from things like losing your car keys. And meanwhile, you trawl through the diaries of these explorers and you're learning about them bouncing back from resilience such as, X, Y, and Z. I think one of my favourite quotes, which I cited yesterday, was something along the lines of, today is the 3rd of January, Mertz has developed dysentery and frostbite. He had always been so immune to the cold that he could scarcely believe it himself until, in the process of trying to prove otherwise, he bit the end off one of his fingers. It's like, you just go like, oh shit! Like,
it's a rough day.
Yeah, you think I love resilience, and you think, oh, maybe I don't like resilience anymore. Like maybe I don't want to work within this space. But yeah, so I was keen to learn about sort of what it was that enabled these guys to go down there and to endure and survive through genuinely indescribable, unfathomable hardship, because it had to be something pretty special, that's for sure.
Yeah, it just makes you think how over the last, say, 100 years, we've gone from severe adversity, right? Like real hard stuff to, I don't know, it sort of seems like a gradient heading down toward life being pretty easy, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, we face different challenges and adversities and I guess issues in day-to-day life now than those early explorers were. I guess it's, it would be hard to try and build a case for them being as harsh or as bad as what we were facing as a human race 100 years ago, right? But undoubtedly they are still difficult and they're new and they're kind of sophisticated in a way, whether it's issues that we're facing around, social media and technology and mental health and burnout and these things, right? But as you actually correctly identified earlier and touched on, resilience is sort of like it's a capacity, right? It's something which can be trained and extended. And as we discussed, it's something which you do so by going through and overcoming hardship and adversity. And I think that is why we do need to continually strive to put ourselves into situations where we can extend our resilience by going through, manufactured, manageable adversity, whether it is ice baths, whether it is, taking up a sport you suck at, going running when you hate it, whether it's learning a language because it's hard, whether it's trying to play an instrument, whatever it is, continually learning and extending ourselves because it's, profoundly difficult and challenging. And if we don't extend ourselves beyond our comfort zone, our capacity to be resilient shrinks right up until the point where something outside of our control happens, right? Whether it is, again, the divorce or the redundancy or the loss of a loved one or the cancer diagnosis or whatever it may be. It's only when these unavoidable, timeless adversities come our way that our ability to deal with them and overcome them has been reduced. That's kind of when we find out.
Yeah, it's just different, isn't it? It's probably measurably easier in a lot of ways from historical times, but then as you say, there's different challenges, right? And it's mostly in here, I think. We've got a lot of amenities and conveniences, but I guess if it's difficult in here, then that's arguably just as bad. So,
and I think and the only way that we can manage that is, as I say, to willingly subject yourself to some form of challenge. And I'm very careful when I sort of say that to frame it in a way which doesn't make it sound like you have to go to 4 a.m. cold plunges and ice baths and that, because God knows I don't, right? And I've got no interest in doing it either. That's not my thing. Yeah, I do a bit of running, but again, I'm pretty mindful of the fact that that will turn a whole bunch of listeners off this idea. It doesn't have to be sort of, your David Goggins kind of shite. Like, this is not what it has to be about. It is as simple as, going and striking up a conversation with a stranger because you don't necessarily feel comfortable doing that. Whether it is, like I say, picking up a language or an instrument or something at a later stage of life when it is harder and when it is hard because it's not comfortable. We just need to continually be putting ourselves in situations where we are being extended, because that's the only way we ever become better at getting through adversity, I suppose.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I think that's where maybe some confusion exists as well, right? Like, you've got the Goggins line of thinking down this end of the spectrum, and then you got the oh no, like, look after yourself, like, be nice, be kind, like, and so people are like looking at these two extremes and being like, oh, which one is it?
Well, it's a thing, right?
Do I go Goggins or do I just
that's
rest?
kind of just a reflection of life today, right?
Yeah.
We live in an incredibly polarized world. Neither of those are correct, is what I would say. That's the case I'd try and build. There's definitely something in the middle with bits and pieces. I guess bits and pieces of both. I hesitate to say that, but there's probably something in the middle, which is far more healthy and comfortable and normal.
But trial and error, right? I think just testing, iterating, experimenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'd take away. Do you think there's another book on the horizon?
I don't think so.
No.
But to be fair, I didn't think so last time either. So I'd never say never. I'd never say never. But I suppose time will tell. As I say, I don't feel like I've got anything else worth saying, in all honesty. I think that it's pretty much where I'm at. Like, and this sort of ties maybe into the just sort of firing shots on your podcast. This ties into the Goggins side of things as well. I never want to find myself put in a position where I feel like I'm speaking on something which I don't have an area of expertise and knowledge around. I feel like there's a lot of people who work out there in, I guess, the well-being space, broadly, I guess you could call it, who constantly feel the need to hold themselves up as, I guess, experts or gurus in areas where they are, profoundly unqualified to do so, because they feel the need to continue, driving the books they're selling, or the podcasts that they're promoting, or the talks that they're giving. There's a lot of people that out there in the speaking world who deliver, a range of 12 different keynote presentations for different companies and organizations, all about different stuff. And one's on sort of, team building, and then another one's on, high performance executive management, and another one's on resilience, and another one's on, Gen Z, and another one's on XYZ. They've sort of got a repertoire of like 15 different topics. And I'm like, you might be extraordinary. I know many people in this field who are extraordinary and who do have a lot of valuable, worthwhile things to say. There's plenty of them out there. But by the point that you consider yourself qualified to be speaking in depth on 15 different topics, at some point you're deluding yourself into believing that you are more qualified or experienced than you really are. And for me, I've been really deliberate and intentional to stick within the space of resilience, right? I've done a bit of study in psychology. It's not a huge amount. I don't hold myself up as some sort of expert around the psychology either, but I've focused really hard to sort of hone down and to craft this niche that I work within. And whilst companies and organizations sometimes come to me and say, could you come and talk about, I don't know, high performance executive leadership or whatever? And I think, undoubtedly I can for an hour, but it'll be complete bullshit. I'll be making it up as I go along. It'll be complete waffle. It's, completely tangentially unrelated or not in any way tied to me, who I am, what I know, my life so far.
Yes.
Which is a long way to say, no, I don't think there's another book, because that book is pretty much everything I know about the only area which I work within. The first book was about my story, which I'm a certified expert within because I was the one that was there. The second book is about something which I've, as I say, worked really hard for half a dozen years to actually gain some genuine expertise and knowledge around, and that's pretty much all I've got. I could write another book, but again, it would probably just be me hypothesizing and
Yeah.
kind of, doing what I think I see a lot of people do in that space, whether it is the Tony Robbins or the David Goggins, people who sort of continually extend the areas and fields on which they are speaking about in a way which I don't necessarily feel like many people are ever qualified to do, right? And it's like something will come up. It'll be like the flavor of the month will be sleep and the impact that sleep has on you. Massive. It's a huge thing. I read a fantastic book called Why We Sleep recently, and it's changed for me the way that I think about it. Doesn't mean I'm going to go and start giving keynote presentations around it at schools or to students or whatever. I don't doubt the fact that I could. I think if I went to schools and said, hey, I'm delivering this new keynote around the importance of sleep and getting off your phone a little bit earlier at night and prioritizing that, I've got no doubt that schools would eat it up. It just doesn't feel genuine or authentic to me. And so, that's not something which I see myself doing.
Speaking of books, as a consumer though, we were talking before about that, about like, reading for comprehension or just volume over quality. Have you got one or two that stick out to you as like books that you've read and you're like, this is a defining book for me, or I've really applied a lot of this? Or
a book called Lost Connections by Johann Hari is extraordinary. That's one of the greatest books that I've ever read, without a doubt. And it sort of unpacks kind of mental health and well-being in the 21st century, and sort of tries to maybe dive a little bit deeper beyond the surface of why generally we are struggling in sort of developed Western countries now more so than in recent times. What it is that is driving the real increase in terms of depression and anxiety and suicide that we're seeing. That's a fantastic book, and I couldn't recommend that more highly. Then there's a few other books which sort of stand out to me within this space, and particularly when I work with schools. There's a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which is a really interesting read in terms of the impact of technology, not just specifically social media or gaming, but just broadly screen time and the use of technology on the developing brains of our young people. It is scary, in one word. It's quite shocking to sort of understand some of the neuroscience behind how technology and devices are physiologically, fundamentally changing the way which our young people's brains grow and develop and work, and the impact which that's having on their well-being. And then there's a whole bunch of other books. There's an author, Atul Gawande, who is a surgeon, who's written a couple of books which I really enjoyed. One of which I've forgotten the title of. The subtitle is A Surgeon's Notes on an Imperfect Science. Better is the name of the book. Better by Atul Gawande is great. And there's a second, he's written about 4. There's a second one which I really enjoyed as well, which again eludes me. but Atul Gawande is a fantastic author, and I think the books give a way of thinking which stems from his background in medicine and surgery, but which is relevant and applicable to sort of all areas and facets of life for us all.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with that reference to screen time and device use. And I was talking to a guy yesterday actually about this, and just how it's very hard to moderate it at any age, right? Yeah. Kids or adult.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, it's the thing when I work with students or present to students. Often there are questions from schools and particularly from parents around screen time and the impact of that. And that's kind of what I refer them to the book for, is because that's, again, when I start to realize that I'm leaving my area of limited expertise and knowledge and moving away from that. That's kind of how narrow and tight I try to keep it. But I'm always very clear that I don't perceive myself as being particularly brilliant at that either. No. I dread the thought of how many hours today I've spent on my phone so far, not doing anything productive, just scrolling. Like it would be hours. I would have wasted hours and hours already today.
It's good self-awareness.
Yeah. And today's probably a little bit of an exception as well. It wouldn't be the average. But you're completely right. I think many, if not all of us, struggle with that, right?
Do you think there will be a swing at some point in the future regarding usage, and people realizing, oh shit, I'm actually burning through, meaningful chunks of the day / my life on the screen?
Yeah.
Optionally, like, no, I'm not talking work, like actually doing
Yeah.
doing something
Yeah.
productive. I'm just talking.
That's a good question. I don't know. Probably depends on a few things, right? We're starting to see this idea of a social media age restrictions and age limits. Australia's obviously brought in the 16-year-old age limit or restriction around social media, is in the process of trying to bring that to fruition. And I know it's an idea which has been bounced around here in NZ as well. That will potentially change how people are conditioned as they move through life in terms of how they engage with social media. But anyone that's watched your mum scroll through Facebook before knows that it's not just 20-something-year-olds or teenagers who are sort of prone to that. Happens to the boomers as well, no doubt.
Totally.
So will there be a swing back the other way? Potentially, but I think it would have to take something pretty fundamental to change in order for us to do that. I think probably more likely it just becomes normal and commonplace, and we end up replacing, as I guess we've currently done, much of the leisure activities at the end of the day, which we previously had, like, I don't know, watching TV or watching Netflix, with watching short format video on screens and scrolling endlessly.
Yeah.
I think it's really here to stay. But again, it's not something I feel abundantly qualified to speak on.
Nah, me neither. I'm just curious. I just wonder if we'll look back on this era of life and be like, it's kind of like smoking was back, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right?
It's a perfect example as well, though, because it's something which took and has taken and continues, I think, to take fundamental, profound shifts in how we manage and interact with the substance, whether it be tobacco or social media or screen time or whatever, for that change to occur, right? It wasn't going to happen by itself. There's no doubt about that.
That's right.
It's about some sort of control,
some sort of shift, right? Yeah. Did you say you've done an ultra marathon?
Yeah. I got into running a few years ago, which is really funny, particularly for anyone who knew me 10 years ago listening to this, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, actually, come to think of it as well, because I have always been the least sporty person I've known in my life. And I know this is not sort of even self-deprecating. It's entirely factual. I was, I was like the chubby kid that gets picked last in PE for the team, and then when you get picked for the team, the whole team kind of groans that you're on their team. Like, that was me the whole time growing up. I came last place in the year 8 cross country just down the road in Hagley Park. That was out of all of the boys and the girls as well. Even my gender advantage couldn't sort of get me across the line anything better than last place. I've always been not particularly fit nor healthy, and never particularly enjoyed sport, and was not very resilient around that at all. Sort of shied away from it simply because of that. It was hard, it was challenging, it was difficult. I got laughed at, and so because of that, I did everything within my power to minimise the amount of time I spent doing it, and so. Yeah, to then sort of accidentally fall into running, let alone ultra running, in my early to mid 20s, was not on anyone's bingo card, let alone mine. That's for sure. But for me, I guess ultra running it serves a couple of purposes. One, it's one of the ways in which I extend myself and subject myself to things voluntarily and willingly, which are difficult and uncomfortable. I think that for me it's been a really big part of, I guess, building up a sense of self-belief and self-efficacy is particularly because I sucked at sport and exercise and running my whole life so much, to be able to tackle and take on challenges like that now means a whole lot more to me. And two, I think, without getting sort of too kind of grandiose, I think for me going through the cancer showed me that should be a few things. Probably one, my body was capable of a lot more than I thought that it was. There's plenty of times in hospital where I thought I cannot withstand or endure this any longer. There is no way I will make it through this. This is sort of the cusp of what my body can handle. It turns out that your body can handle and withdraw and sort of endure and withstand a whole lot more than it tells you that it can. And
Right.
I found that through the cancer. But two, the second part of that, I found that the key to unlocking that, or the key to finding that space, was sort of in the top couple of inches, right? Like it was all mental. It was all inside the head. That was sort of what unlocked the capacity to endure or outlast when it felt like it was unlikely to be able to do so. And for me, endurance sport broadly, which has included ultra running, but also endurance cycling, has been the only other thing which I've ever found which has allowed me to sort of put myself back in that place of playing around with the limits of what my body can endure and using my head, using my brain to try and to try and be able to do so, to try and unlock that. Within the ultra running world, I'm definitely on the very, very short end of things. Furthest I've raced was about 65 Ks, which, is a lot of Ks, but I should really stress the point that that's kind of, you're just getting into the area where you can even talk about yourself as an ultra runner, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of friends that I've got who run in the space who are, doing not 160, not doing 60 Ks, but sort of more 160 Ks or 260 Ks or 360 Ks, and that sort of keeps me in a very, very, it gives me a very, very healthy sort of sense of perspective around always wanting to continue chasing and seeking more, I think, in the running. But for me, it's been it's been a big part of the last couple of years, particularly.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, there's been a bit of chat around the Creative Room event coming up.
Yes.
Later in the year.
Yes, okay.
Haven't locked in for it quite yet.
Chat
but,
inside your world? You thinking you could be on the start line there?
Just the Monday morning run group. There's
nice.
there's a bit of chat.
Okay, fantastic.
I'd like to tick off the ultra. So
Yeah, I think that if you run and if you enjoy running, I think it naturally becomes sort of a testament to us as humans, how we just have to do everything to the extreme, right? Like you can't do a normal, healthy amount of anything.
No.
If you enjoy something, it's like, maybe I should do the ultra version of it. Maybe I should do take it to the max.
The maxi
really,
version.
Why don't I just really kind of like see how far I can take it? Which sort of precisely what my mum says. Mum doesn't get it, and mum worries about me as mums do. And mum goes, why can't you just do like a normal amount of running? Why can't you go do 5Ks? Why can't you go do 10Ks? Why does it have to be 50? Why does it have to be 60? And I don't really know what the answer is. But it seems to be the same answer. The answer to that is the same thing, which is drawing you and the Monday Run group towards the Creator Room, I suspect, as well, right?
Yeah. Maybe it's just that curiosity around potential. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the desire for more. I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely some wiring there, though, isn't there, that just encourages like either challenge or progress, or
I think we like
both.
to see how far we can take things.
See what the
I think we
potential
like
is.
to see, I think we like to know where our limits are. And I think as we go in search of them, I think we really like the fact that we tend to not find them, right? We tend to find
So
that
true. Yeah.
actually that's within my abilities as well.
Very true.
Yeah.
I just did the Christchurch full, and
Awesome.
yeah, especially that course, right?
Yep.
4 loops,
It's
like,
not one I would be doing, I'll tell you
no,
that.
I mean, I'm sort of thinking the same thing halfway through.
Yeah.
But it really is a test of mental, just like, I don't know, a lot of the things that get talked about, right? Like just the one foot in front of the other and just
100%.
hang in there, like just a little bit further. Like don't worry about the
Absolutely.
end, but just like a little bit further. And it is amazing what we can withstand, whether it's, running or work or any area of life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this sort of ties into the resilient side of things for me as well. But that's something which I'm very interested around with resilience, right? Because a big part of what we can endure and what we can withstand is driven or dictated by our capacity to be resilient, I guess, by definition, and the knowledge that we can sort of craft and hone and better ourselves in that regard. I just find that so exciting.
Yeah, it's fascinating, all right?
Yeah.
Very good. Well, what else do you have to mention anything? Anything?
I don't think I've got anything else worth saying.
Any other burning desires?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't think so. I think you've kind of got all of my best yarns out of me.
All the best yarns. Watch out for the sleep presentation coming up 2026.
Yeah, God, I'm gonna have to. I'll come back as a guru and expert
a sleep guru.
in an entirely unrelated field in 12 months' time, and you'll be like, we've got a repeat guest here.
I guess
Jake's now back to talk about macroeconomics or something.
It is a way to learn, though, right?
I suppose.
By
so.
Teaching or presenting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I did a talk recently on sales and prospecting, and it's not at all that I feel qualified to do that.
But it's something which you've done. I think there's a big difference between feeling qualified to do something and actually knowing what you're talking about. And I feel like there's a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Whereas for something like that, I would have complete and full confidence in your knowledge and abilities and everything around that. Because I think people don't feel qualified a lot of the time because they don't back themselves more than anything else. I'd back you for that.
Oh, I think it's about the positioning too, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think if you can use enough caveats and
Sure.
disclaimers up front, right?
Well, there's a lot to be learned. And again, it is very much how you frame yourself. There's a lot to be learned from other people. And that's, I think if there's a common sort of theme or motif throughout this podcast, it's been the importance of people as a side note. But there's a lot to be learned from just talking to and having yarns with people. I guess that's what the podcast is about, right? That's sort of why we do this. It's why people listen to this. It's because there's so much to be gained from just hearing people chat. And you don't have to be an expert in any field to learn from someone else's lived experience or to hear their perspectives and thoughts and opinions on it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people out there who promote themselves as experts within different, sort of areas or fields. And that's a different thing. If you want to come along and say, this is what I think, this is what I've learned, this is what I know, this is what I've seen or done, fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing to me what I have seen over the course of my business coaching career, which is what I do when I'm not podcasting, how through conversation and some structure, a lot of problems or situations can be clarified or resolved. And it's not about having, the right answer at the front end or the knowledge of how to solve it, but just collaboratively talking. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing what you can figure out when two people get together and just throw around some ideas. It seems unstructured and loose and a bit flaky, but it's something that I've seen time and time again. So there's something in it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so a lot of value in the conversation. Good people, conversations.
That's what makes life worth living, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
It's pretty cliche on my part, but I really do think that's true.
Yeah. And as I say, my definition personally is spending the day with good people. And so, if you can do that a couple of days in a row. And
it's been a pretty good day if you can manage that.
100%. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. So, man, thank you. Thank you so much, Jake.
I appreciate it. It's been a privilege to be able to come along and to get involved and to have a chat and spend the day with a good person and to have a good conversation and to hopefully to get some value and learnings and knowledge out of it as well.
No, that means a lot. I'm midway through the book, so I'm going to continue reading that.
Yeah.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful to be here.
Legend.